Welcome to our channel, $1 Million Made Easy. On this channel, we create spreadsheets to run numbers for you. You can see the actual numbers, and when you do, you will be amazed. What we do is use the actual historical returns for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years, which you can see them right here, and we simply project ahead what might happen with similar returns for you in the future. So I got this request from somebody. Said they have 500,000 saved up. So we're going to do 500,000. It said their expenses are 4,000 a month. So we just picked the 4,000 a month. Said they get 2,200 from Social Security a month. So we're going to start that from right now. So instead of needing 4,000 a month, which would be a 9.6% withdrawal rate, which would be way too much, we kick into 2,200. Then we're down to a 4.32% withdrawal rate. We also want to, instead of leaving this at 1,800 all the way down through, which is 4,000 minus the 2,200, the 2,200 will go up by the cost of living each year. We want this going up by cost of living. We're going to do a 3% cost of living. We also want to do a 70-30 asset allocation, meaning 70% staying in the S&P 500 because we want to have the benefit of when the returns are positive. But we also want a cash reserve account, so whenever the market's going down, these sums right here are coming out of the cash reserve account, which is some kind of a liquid account, because you don't want to knock the S&P down even farther by taking these kind of amounts in a down market. You don't want to sell low. So what we want to do is go ahead and run the numbers to see how these kind of numbers would have worked going forward if the returns are like the last 100 years. So we're going to go ahead and update this. So here's what this individual wants to know. What's the most I can draw off of that 500K to have my money last at least 25 years? Well, this column right here shows you how long your money will last after 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. And in the last 100 years, given all these numbers, the only time you'd run out of money if we had returns like 1929 and 1930, the actual graph is right here. You can see that's the only time you're running out of money. So what we want to do is go ahead and increase this amount because he wants to know what's the most I can draw off. Right now, you got a 97% success rate. The only time you have any problems would be if we had returns like 1929 and 1930. A lot of people tell me not to even use the depression years, but I like to show you what could possibly happen if we ever had something as devastating as a depression type returns. Let's go and update this. Maybe just go up to 4,500. Instead of a 4.32% withdrawal rate, of course, you're still going to get the 2,200 from Social Security. Now we're up to a 5.52% withdrawal rate. That's going to make these numbers a little bit higher for the failure rate and a little bit lower for the success rate. Let's go ahead and run these numbers. Now you can see we have this right here is how often you fail in the first 20 years. That's a 9% failure rate, which is right here, 8.6 actually. So you still have a 91.4% success rate. This is the actual graph, the depression years, which we saw before. But also something else is kind of snuck in. Now we have a problem if we have returns like around the year 2000. Again, this was a bad decade from 2000 to 2008. It dropped 4 times in that 9-year period. Not quite as many as during the depression years, but still problematic to the point where you would run out of money given this scenario. Now, what could you do differently? Well, first of all, I want to show you. These are 1925 numbers showing you. There's 1929. You can see you run out of money in 12 years. Let's go all the way down to the year 2000 and see the actual numbers to show you where they come from. Again, year 2000, there was 3 down years. Then you had a down 37% to the point where if you had these kind of numbers, you'd run out of money in 15 years. That's at 4,500. Let's go back and show you what we just left it to 4,000, like I said. Then your money would be lasting a little bit longer. Your money would be lasting, you'd have 41,000 after that. But again, we're running the numbers of 4,500 just to see how much you could possibly. So the thing is, if you think it's possible that we could have 3 down years, they call this sequence of returns risk when you first retire. If you have some down years, you could run into a problem area. So what could you do apart from changing this 4,500 to go back to 4,000? What if we change the COLA? We change the COLA, then that's still running out of money in 16 years. What about if we did this? Right now we've got COLA going up by 3% each year. What about every time the market goes down, the very next year, you don't take a COLA? In other words, you basically eliminate, in this case, we have a 3% COLA. Let's just go ahead and eliminate that in the down years. Now you stay in at 2,300 because these are down years, so you're not going up at all. So you're at 2,300. Does that change anything? Well, it made it last 17 years. What if you actually take a negative COLA in down years? In other words, whenever the market's going down, you go a little bit less. Did that change anything? No, you're still at 94,000. Your money still lasts in 17 years. So again, if initially when you retire you have these kind of down years, you might have a problem taking out 4,500. That's a 5.52% withdrawal rate. Here's another thing that people don't consider. Sometimes people say, "Well, just change your asset allocation." Well, for example, if you're taking out 5.52% and your bucket approach isn't paying you 5.5%, you're going to be losing on that money too. And so even when the market's going down, you're taking it out of the bucket, you're still going to run out of money because your withdrawal rate is too much higher than what you're getting. Right now, I got it running at 3%. Let's change this to 4%. Say you could find some kind of a liquid account that paid 4%. Then it looks like your money runs out in 18 years instead of 17 years. So you can see going up to 4,500 could be problematic, but still 91% of the time, folks, look at this, 91, you're going to have no problem. You could increase it. Again, you're starting out with 500,000. This we would have after, you'd have $1 million in these scenarios. In fact, the numbers are right here. You can just go down through and see how many times you hit $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. It's just whether you have those initial years, some of these down years initially when you first retire. That's when you have a problem. But 91% of the time, you'd have no problem with 4,500. Let's go up a little bit higher. Let's go to 4,800. I'm going to go to 4,700. I want to get 6%. Okay, 6%. How often would that be a problem in the last 100 years? We're going to keep everything the same in down markets. We're just going to give you no COLA, but in all the other ones, we're going to give a 3% COLA. Let's go and see how those numbers work. So you got a 14% failure rate if you keep the COLA at 3%. If we do the down years, keep it to no COLA for those down years. Then we're going to run the numbers again because we want to do apples to apples here, comparing 5% withdrawal rate, or was 5.52 to a 6% withdrawal rate. You're getting a little bit high there. But if you could eliminate the COLA in down years, then your money would last over 20 years, 92.6% of the time. Again, we just had the problem during the Depression years and during the year 2000. Let's do another thing. Let's climb up a little bit higher. Let's go up to 5,000 a month, which would be 6.72% with the same scenario. Actually, I'm going to, apples to apples, I'm going to go ahead and do that this way with keeping the COLA at. Again, now we see it 27% of the time you'd be running out of money. Let's look at the graph. You're starting to see not just the Depression years, also 1937, but also we have some problems around the late 60s and early 70s. Why? Because we had 2 down years. Again, we're projecting ahead what might happen based on what's happened in the past. So at 27% of the time, if you're comfortable with that, then you can go ahead and take out this kind of money. Remember, we started out with 4,000. Now we're up to 5,000. Again, increasing that by 3% a year, doing a 70-30 split. But again, as we mentioned before, that 70-30 split, you're putting it over in a bucket. So when the market's going down, you're just coming out of the bucket. But if the bucket's not paying you close to the 6.72%, you're losing ground on that too. So you're actually having problems with a 6.72%. So if you could live with a 72% chance of success, then you can go up to 5,000. But again, he wanted me to run it at 4,000 and see what's the most he could take out. Again, the question he needs to answer is, what is he comfortable with for a success rate? Let's again be reminded what we had at 4,500 with these same numbers that we've been running. Again, with a 5.52% withdrawal rate, you'd have a problem 8.6% of the time, but 91% of the time you'd be just fine. If we eliminated the COLA in down years, again, what did those numbers show? Now we just have a 5% failure rate. Again, the Depression years and around the year 2000. So it looks like he wanted to go to 4,500. He'd be in good shape most every time, but he also, in down years, he could eliminate the COLA, so it'd be staying at 2,300 after the down years, but then it would go ahead and increase by this 3% that we've got to COLA, and then it would be growing. And then he'd be successful 95% of the time over 20 years. If we do the 30-year graph, you can see the only problem you have is the depression years because it hasn't been long enough to run the years for the 2000 because it hasn't been 30 years since then. That's what we do on this channel. We run all kinds of different numbers. He wanted to know what's the most you could probably take out and not have too much of a problem. It looks like maybe 4,500. Again, whatever his comfort level is, if he wanted to go a little bit higher, if he wanted to go to like 4,700, which would be a 6% withdrawal rate. We already ran those numbers, but just for review, looks like instead of 4,500 having a 95% success rate, if he went up to 4,700, which is be a 6% withdrawal rate, he'd have a 93% success rate. And only in these years would he have a problem. Again, the depression years and around the year 2000. So again, what he could do is go ahead and take out this kind of money. And then if he had some down years initially, that's when you want to cut back some and maybe even go to a negative COLA for a little bit when you're having these down years. Again, when these first years are down years, that's when you kind of really need to monitor and maybe take out a little bit less than you were planning on. Most of the time, it looks like he'd be just fine going not just for 4,000, but 4,700. And 93% of the time, he'd be okay. And again, if we had these kind of down years, you just take a little bit less and definitely not take the COLA in those years. But folks, that's what we do on this channel. We love running numbers for people just to show you what you might have in the future. Please consider subscribing. Please share. Please like these videos. Let people know about this channel. I just want to help as many people as possible in the accumulation stage to get to $1 million. If you don't get to $1 million, go ahead and run the numbers. And don't forget to take into account Social Security. Thanks for watching.